everyone. I am here with the fabulous Anne Molesky, and we are here for another episode of Teaching Music Tomorrow. And today we get to talk about extractable phrases. We get to talk about these small musical units that we can pull out of a larger work and apply to a lot of different conscious scenarios and a lot of like active music making settings. So right away, Anne, when we say an extractable phrase, all of a sudden it sounds like we're talking about theory. It sounds like there's going to be a test. It sounds like I don't understand. I'm afraid to raise my hand and ask a question. It sounds like I have to like sit in a lecture hall, blah, 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 wah, wah, wah. So talk to me about extractable phrases and maybe what they are and maybe how they are useful outside of just I don't know, a fun theory lesson.
Yeah, so you use the word phrase, I use the word pattern. I think we're basically talking about the same thing. So for me, when I was first sort of introduced to this idea, it was in my Kodai training, and it was in the context of thinking about how to organize resources. So if you're
Mm.
organizing resources that are good for this concept or good for that concept, this rhythm, whatnot, you also want to share which context that particular element is occurring in. So, for example, does TT happen with ta ta tt ta, or does it happen with tt ta ta ta, all that type of stuff? So thinking about the different permutations and the different ways that these different rhythmic and melodic elements specifically can live
Mm.
within, generally speaking, 4-beat patterns inside of whatever repertoire we might use in our classroom. Now that sounds like very textbook, like like, okay, so we're gonna analyze all the things, and then it feels like very tedious and maybe not the most useful information to have. So really, for all of us thinking about teaching like this minute, today, tomorrow, an extractable pattern is thinking still about how a particular musical concept, something that might be related to a behavioral objective, lives and breathes within the song repertoire. And the idea is that we can take that 4-beat pattern from whatever it is that we're teaching, and it can be an opportunity to, at least in my situation, usually have some like reading and writing implications to it. So it's something that we can take out, if you want to use the term make conscious, or to present that type of musical literacy moment to students. An
Mhm.
extractable pattern is something that we can do that with.
Yeah, and for me, the magic of knowing extractable patterns is that this is what opens up every other door in our teaching. So if you just like hear a song on the radio and you're like, could I use that in the classroom? Well, you're going to like hum through the melody and find an extractable pattern. Then you say, yes, it's surrounded by other known material. There's one new musical element that I could use in this, larger chorus or whatever it is. Or you go to your bookshelf and you open up, whatever text you have. And the question is like, can I use this in second grade? If you know extractable patterns, all of a sudden you're not reliant on a curriculum resource. You're not reliant on a curriculum author or on what your, I don't know, what your district says, like are the songs to use this semester, assuming that you can use your own ideas in your teaching. This is what lets you open up a lot of doors and be able to facilitate a lot of musical ideas that you'd get to generate yourself as the teacher instead of always having to go to Pinterest or to Facebook or to whatever and say, I need a song for X. You can just look through a song and know if it would work for X.
Yeah, and not to steal anything that we're going to talk about here in a minute when we get into kind of some action taking steps. But the idea is like we could take that 4-beat pattern, even if it's not something, even if the rest of the song or the rest of the repertoire
Mm,
would not be something that students could use yet. So for example, if you
mm,
hear something that has um like a pop song that has a particular motive or a phrase in it that is really lends itself to kind of this elemental form that we keep talking about, but the rest of it is like very syncopated, very anacroustic, and it's just not where your students are yet. You
mhm.
can still just take that piece, or maybe you can write an ostinato or something like that, where it becomes more accessible for your students, even though the entire big picture of that particular work or that particular maybe even 16-beat song isn't
Mhm.
necessarily where they are at the moment. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, it allows us to pull a focus without
Mm-hmm.
having students be able to read and write and orally identify and notate and improvise with the whole entire, 32 beat thing. It lets us
Yeah.
narrow in our focus. So students have something bite sized. And I heard you say normally it's a 4 beat phrase. It's something that's bite sized for students. And very often that lives as a 4 beat phrase. I have
Right. Absolutely.
a graphic because I happen to have done like a course about this inside the planning binder. So I'm going to show this
Mm-hmm.
really quick because when it comes to knowing, share screen. Okay, so when it comes to knowing what is an extractable phrase, an extractable pattern, and what is not, we always want our pattern, our phrase, to have one new element surrounded by other known elements. So if our new element, let's imagine that our new element is tika tika or takadimi or tiri
Mm-hmm.
tiri or whatever you're using. If that is the new thing and that's the unknown, that means that everything else in the pattern has to come from above our sequence kind of flow. If I have an extractable phrase with tika tika, then I would say, great, I can use this to teach tika tika. And that's often what we do. Like, I need a song to teach 16th notes. And so we open
Mm-hmm.
up a book and it has a bunch of 16th notes and we're like, this is perfect, right? But if that 16th note is surrounded by a bunch of syncopation or a bunch of, like you said, a bunch of anacrusic motifs in it, it's not going to be as effective as it could be if everything else in that collection came before it in this rhythmic stream. Does that make sense? Anything that you want to clarify in that?
Yeah, so and we kind of talked about this when we were talking about this episode, and I'm sure we'll get into it as the episode goes on. But just to kind of further clarify, so if you're looking at a piece specifically for tika tika for 16th notes, and you notice that there's lots of syncopa, there's lots of t tika tika t, all of that kind of stuff, you're like, oh, can't use it. But what if there is a pattern that is just ta ta tika tika ta? It
Mm-hmm.
might still be a really, really great tika tika song, and it might just be that that's the one phrase that you do something with
Yes.
literacy for, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so let's imagine, Anne, that we are going to take a quarter rest or a beat of silence. And we can call this a ta rest, we can call it a quarter rest, whatever it is. If we have a song that we want to use to teach quarter rest, then in that extractable pattern, we want it to be surrounded by other known elements. And depending on the sequence you use, most likely that will mean ta and toddy, or beamed eighth notes and a quarter note, or one sound on a beat and two sounds on a beat, however you want to call that.
Mhm.
So if we were to look at Bow Wow Wow, I'll sing this, and I'm sure we're singing it exactly the same way. It goes, Bow Wow Wow, whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog, Bow Wow Wow. I have several phrases here that I could make extractable patterns. For example, if I could take Little Tommy Tucker's dog, that could be its own unit for ta and toddy. For ta rest, I see it a lot of other places. I see it here, I see it here, I see it here. So at the end of this first subphrase, at the end of the second subphrase, and at the end of the fourth subphrase. And we can double check that if we pat a steady beat and find how many times we have a beat without a sound. We go, bow, wow, wow. Whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog, bow, wow, wow. Okay, so can confirm orally and visually happens 3 times. So that means that, I'll take this bar away, that I could look at these 3 subphrases. Bow, wow, wow, nothing. That is its own extractable pattern. I can pull that out
Mhm.
of the repertoire and we can put it on the board. We can move to it. We can hang on to that idea inside our brains and work with it. I can also work with whose dog art thou? Because toddy right here, if we recall from our rhythmic flow, toddy is a known element, which means I can consciously compare it to this new element, which is our beat without a sound. And then bow wow wow is the same there at the end. So if I have those that I can pull out and extract, that means that I can do other things with them, like apply them to a different context, such as little dog, arf, arf, lost. Tommy Tucker. And if friends are listening instead of watching, you can find this on our YouTube video. I have some just graphics here on the board of rhythmic building blocks that we can move around. And this can become, a dictation activity. This can be a part work thing. This could be an ostinato thing. But the idea is we're moving from an extractable phrase that I can then take and move to something else, in this case, rhythmic building blocks. Okay, Anne, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I love that. Can you go? Oh, you took it away.
Oh yeah, let's go back.
Can we leave it up just for a little bit?
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, so thinking about extractable patterns in terms of things that we can turn into literacy moments, things that we are taking extractable patterns. Again, you said that we're surrounding a new or unknown element with things that are known. And that is, as you said, to build that context, right? If I was using this as my quarter rest present son, do you think, and this, I'm not trying to trick you, is there a better phrase than another one? Yes or no? And if there was, what would it be? Again, it's not a trick question. It
I feel
might
like
feel
it's a
like a
trick
trick question.
question.
It kind
Oh,
of is.
great.
I can answer it myself. I don't think there is. I think that the conversation could be, if we're talking about just a rhythmic element. And again, this is getting like very, very splitting hairs, and does it really matter? I don't know, but it might be something that I've heard people debate. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So, you have bow, wow, wow, rest, which is all quarter notes. Then you have whose dog art thou, quarter note. So whose dog art thou has both of kind of the other choices,
Yes.
except for the new note. So I could
Yes.
see how one might argue that, since we could say, well, is that one sound on a beat? No, it's not a quarter note. Is it two sounds on a beat? No, it's not two paired eighth notes. It must be something new, if we were kind of like going down that road.
And
Do you have any thought about
yeah,
that?
and I agree with that, because the whole point is that you're comparing it to other consciously known sounds. So we'll need something to actually compare it to. And those beamed eighth notes aren't in, or those two sounds on one beat are not in the other phrases. So that's why I also have one large bar over all of it, because this, like you said, it's very often in a 4-beat context, but this is still, all of these 8 beats, these are still bite-sized enough, especially with a known song like Bow Wow Wow would be, that we can look at it kind of zooming out a little bit more. And then we might zoom out even a little bit more and use the last 8 beats as its own phrase.
Yeah, sure. No, and the thing is too, is that with quarter rest in particular, we're talking about sound versus no sound on a heartbeat.
Yes.
So it's a little
Yes.
different than like dividing up a heartbeat and talking about long, short sounds on one heartbeat, and all of that kind of musical math that we do with different rhythmic concepts later on, right? It's kind of just not just, but it's a comparable rest type lesson. So it has a little bit of a different flair otherwise. But yeah, but I love that.
I agree. You have something a little bit more involved. I feel like rhythmic extractable phrases are pretty straightforward and easy. I think when you add melody, it adds in a lot of other variables. So can you talk through your thoughts about Bow Wow Wow from a melodic standpoint?
Yeah, so if you were to quickly analyze this, you could look and get all the melodic elements is a pentatonic, do pentatonic, or pentatone rather, because there's no, anyway, that's another deal. Anyway, so we have our do, we have mi, we have so, la, so, mi, do, and then the very last 4 beats has our mi, re, do. So if you were looking at my curricular sequence, and I think yours is similar, I teach so to mi, so mi, then so mi la, and then so mi do, and then re comes as the last note of the pentatone. So for me, this would be a song that would kind of go in my re list, just because you have the extractable pattern of mi, re, do. Okay, and that's usually how that's usually the permutation or the extractable pattern that I would teach re in, because we're talking about moving stepwise. They know that it's either ascending or descending. We have our do home note, and all of that good type of stuff. So a possible extraction, I guess, sounds like I'm talking about dentistry. Possible extractable pattern for this might be just a simple, this is super simple, but a simple just echo singing or even improvisation exercise. So particularly since we have the text bow wow wow at the beginning and at the end, we can play around with mi re do a little bit. So even if it's just bow, wow, wow, everyone echoes bow, wow, wow, bow, wow, wow, bow, wow, wow, bow, wow, wow, right? And you can manipulate that however you'd like, to put magnets on the board to show kind of like a high, middle, low type of thing, just an abstract space. Have students take turns and then think about what it would be, think, pair, share, all of that kind of things. I mean, the world is your oyster as far as that goes, right? And that's something that can happen with or without notation, whether it's iconic on the board or not. Now, once it becomes like a mi, re, do thing, then you could take that same activity and translate it into bow, wow, wow. What do you think that is? Show me with your hand signs. Bow, wow, wow. Yes, it's do, re, mi, right, etc. So again, just lots of opportunities to take that rhythmic context, because again, the melodic stuff is going to be tied to the rhythm, and then which is tied to the text, and then go ahead and manipulate it as you see fit. So the follow-up questions then, of course, always are, if this is a great race song, what about all the other places that do exist? Because if you notice in the third motive, you have so, 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 la, so, mi, do. And I know if you look at your curricular map, your curricular sequence, you have so, mi, do. They're listed. And then you go to so, do. And I actually have those flip-flopped.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So in my sequence, I teach so to do, and then I teach so, mi, do. Again, this is really splitting hairs. There's the reason for doing it is probably purely repertoire, right? That you use versus what I use. Does it really matter? We could fight about it. That's not what this episode's about. Maybe that's another day. But you could, if you were teaching bow wow wow for rest and you wanted to also use it as a prep or even a present for do, you could extract that third motive. For me, it's not the best song because something like Apple Tree that ends, if your apple knocks me out, is a better do song just because of how I had things laid out in my sequence. And I might also have some better songs that are like my really big core, like I'm going to derive everything, all of the notation with so, mi, do, like mouse, mousy, little mousy, her. I'm changing tonalities, but anyway,
You're right.
I'm changing keys. There's other choices that might be better if that's your goal for the song. However, the point of an extractable pattern is, as we said at the beginning of this episode, to be able to extract it and use it and to analyze it in that way as kind of like a quick win, whereas something that is 16 beats or 32 beats is going to take you much longer, particularly for a melodic element, because when you derive the melody, you tend to also derive the rhythm. Okay, I'll step away.
I love it. I love this stuff, Anne. I know I was talking about theory. I had like a pretty poor relationship with music theory growing up, and it wasn't until my master's degree that I was like, wait, I didn't know this was fun. Wait, I didn't know this is like the coolest thing that you could ever do with your time, and is like what I really like thinking about. I had a really rough relationship with all of this up until that point in my music my own personal music education. So all of this sounds really fun to me. And if people are listening and they happen to like thinking about the construction of music, they'll really like it as well. If you don't like thinking about the construction of music and you just want something to teach tomorrow, then, Anne, could you wrap up, all of what we've been saying? If someone just like, it's too much, Victoria, you need to stop talking.
Well, I think what you did is great. I think if you have bow wow wow happening in your classroom, or you want to look up the game that exists in 80 million trillion different places on the interwebs, and teach it tomorrow, you definitely could. And then if you have quarter rest stuff in your back pocket, like your rhythmic building blocks, and then if you just want to do some solo singing, like I said, and you just want to do bow wow wow back and forth, and then you have mi, re, do on the board, or you just have high, middle, low, bow wow wow, even with a body ladder, just back and forth, my turn, your turn, whole class, or individual students, small groups, that type of work, I think would be great.
Yeah. And the question is, what musical units, what musical phrases or sentences or ideas, what are small enough and musically dense enough that students can really unpack them and put them back together. And doing that subphrase over subphrase over subphrase that links to other subphrases, make it larger and larger and larger. Over time, students have developed the ears to kind of grab onto music and compare it to a lot of different things and do a lot of really orally complex and very impressive stuff. But it all starts with, like what you were saying, these small, almost always like a 4-beat pattern, with just one new thing that they can compare to other known elements.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think too that it's good. It's fun too to have something like Bow Wow Wow where there is just like these small changes, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
do have like the ta, 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 rest. Oh, how is this one different? Like even if you're just comparing extractable pattern to extractable pattern,
Yes.
and this is all on dough, this is all on me, and then this one has a descending, like even when you get into kind of those small patterns and have the kids involved too in kind of this analysis work and this learning
Mm-hmm.
by comparative, learning what something is by what it is not, which is the whole game,
Yeah.
right? I think that there can be a lot of really great meaning making there for them too. So
I completely agree. And it sets them up to be able to do it with other repertoire that we use in the classroom. And then, equally important, slash more importantly, music that they encounter on their own outside of our classrooms as well. Yep.
yeah. Awesome. Well, this was kind of a different episode for us, I feel like.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. So if you found this interesting, I'm sure we've talked about extractable patterns in other episodes. So as we've been telling everyone, you can listen obviously on wherever you are listening now, watch on YouTube, or you can go to teachingmusictomorrow.com and use that search function to find more stuff that you heard that might have existed in like the almost 30 episodes that we recorded now. So there's
Yeah.
lots and lots of information there for people to check out.